Stand, pledge of allegiance, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can you make sure your cell phones are off, please? And when you're called to come to testify, come up to the podium, no talking from the audience, please. Okay, roll call.
Board Member Anne-Marie Fulham.
Here.
Board Member and Chair Anthony D'Italia.
Here.
Board Member Brian DeSessa.
Here.
Board Member Mark Schiffer.
Here.
Okay. Not first order of business, I'm gonna bring the first hearing up. Georgia Cabillas against Fink Family LP. Georgia Cabillas represented here?
It's Fink against George Cabillas.
I know, Fink, yes, I'm sorry. Georgia Cabillas here? And Mr. Fink, you're here?
Yes, sir, and some other witnesses.
Okay. Mr. Fink, if you would come up, state your name, get sworn in, and give us a short testimony of why you're bringing this case against George Cabillas.
Just before we get started, Sean Cambridge, Assistant Town Attorney. I'm just going to make note here, this is the Southampton Town Licensing Review Board. Southampton Village has also passed a local law proposing that this board take jurisdiction over their licenses. That document has been signed by the Southampton Village Mayor, but is not yet countersigned by the Southampton Town Supervisor. This board will not take any action today against that village license. We'll send a new notice with the information regarding the village to all parties, and that license will be addressed on a future date before this board. All right? Mr. Fink, I just need you to state your name and address on the record. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth with the knowledge of penalties of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Please proceed.
Before I start, I want to bring to the board's attention, I had an ex parte conversation with board member Schiffer 2 days ago, calling me about my complaint and case against the board. I found it to be quite unsettling. I felt that he was predisposed in his decision-making with regard to my case, putting blame on the town and the village supervisors. And then he suggested that I try to settle this thing with Mr. White, and then spoke to Mr. White in trying to settle this case, and Mr. White made me a financial offer to settle, and I explained to Mr. Schiffer that this is not about money. This is about what's right and wrong. This is about violation of the codes and the laws of the state, and that I'm here for those reasons, and that any settlement with Mr. White is unacceptable. And I feel under those circumstances that Mr. Schiffer should recuse himself from making any decisions with regard to this matter.
Mr. Schiffer,
I'd like to respond.
go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Fink, at the last meeting on the Licensing Review Board, this complaint was assigned to me, and it is standard procedure for us to contact the two parties so we can hear both stories, both sides of the stories, which I did 2 days ago. There is absolutely no predisposition. Having been involved as an engineer in the community for 20 years, I have heard of Mr. White. I don't think I made any representation of any predisposition. When I spoke to Mr. White offered a settlement, which I then turned over to you. I was not aware that that settlement had been given before. So although I think that there is no reason for my recusal, not to have any cloud on the matter or the decision of the board, I'll recuse myself to make sure that, the hearings, we have a quorum here today, I think that,
Okay, he's recusing himself.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Schiffer. Thank you for hearing my complaint against Michael White and his company, Georgia Builders, as it pertains to multiple violations of Section 14311B of the Town of Southampton. As I said, my name is David Fink. I live at 185 Bishop's Lane in Southampton. Our family, after renting in Southampton for many years, was finally able to call a place our home when we purchased the house originally built by Mr. White and Georgia Builders in February of 2022. We were even more excited because this house was sold to us with all the reps and warranties of a new home, even though it was not a new home. Unfortunately, after we started living in the house, the true condition of the house, from its quality of construction, materials, fixtures, and most importantly, the life safety protections any newer home should have, were not to code and in violation of the law. At closing, we included a list of post-closing work Mr. White was to complete within 30 days, and to date, almost over a year, Mr. White has not completed the post-closing list and other warranty items, which is an example of his failure to timely perform under Section 143-11. Mr. White's failure to complete the post-closing items, additional warranty defects, along with other more serious examples discovered in the Mike Benacasa inspection, goes directly to his truthfulness, failure to timely perform, a deviation and disregard from plans, disregard and/or violation of building, fire, and safety codes and laws, and failure to conduct home improvements in a skillful manner, which in my opinion are clear violations of Section 143.11b, 3, 4, 8, 9, 14, and 17. A tragedy beyond words occurred on August 2nd of 2022 in Noyak, when a house burned down, leading to the death of 2 young women and serious injuries to the father and the mother and the son. For us and my family, this was even more tragic because we are family, acquaintances, and friends of the people who were in the fire. Due to this tragedy, and after experiencing firsthand for over 5 months the poor workmanship, inferior materials, inferior fixtures, and life safety violations directly attributed to the construction of the house, I immediately did 2 things. 1, I called my alarm company. I upgraded all my smoke detectors. I added additional alarms. I added heat sensors, and I tied everything into one system. Then, on the advice of my attorney, after hearing about my problems with the building, I hired the retired former head building inspector, Mike Benacasa, to inspect my house. The deficiencies and code violations discovered by Mr. Benacasa in the home, which he will discuss, were numerous, but none were more serious or concerning than the life safety deficiencies and violations, which I will outline for you now. Mr. Benacasa discovered in his inspection that Mr. White's electrician removed the arc fault breakers in my panels after the electrical inspection. For your information, arc fault breakers are electrical breakers or electrical devices designed to protect against fires caused by arcing faults in the home electrical wiring. As a result of these fault breakers being illegally removed, the lives of my family were placed at risk. Mr. White denied this had happened, but the electrician admitted removing the arc fault breakers and installing them in another house, which I believe Mr. White was building. The electrician did come back and install new arc fault breakers after being confronted by the village electrical inspector. Mr. Benacasa also noted that the dryer on the first floor of the home was not exhausting or venting to the outside, but instead was venting somewhere in the walls or the enclosed overhang in front of the house. Since the dryer vent was not exhausting to the outside, a fire could have occurred in the walls of my house. At our cost, we moved the washer and dryer to the basement and vented the dryer to the outside. According to the National Fire Protection Association, dryers and washing machines cause an average of 15,000 fires each year, with dryers causing 92% of those fires. In addition to the life safety code violations I've discussed, it was determined that Mike Benacasa found code violations relating to stair railings, kitchen sinks, bathroom vents and fans, attic electrical, and waste lines. Of these code violations, the most egregious was that the 4 bathroom vents on my second floor were not venting to the outside of the house, but instead were just laying on the floor of the attic. Interestingly enough, when you look at the house from the outside, you see vents going through the house. But Mr. White had sprayed foam insulation on the entire underside of the roof, thus covering up the vents so you couldn't even find them. As a point of reference, bathroom fans should be vented to the outside to remove excess moisture. This is the safest technique to evacuate damp air from bathrooms, since it avoids producing negative pressure on your home's walls or ceilings, which could have led to mold up in my attic. On or about May 5th, 2022, we lost electricity to our garage. After several days, my house manager, who will testify, we determined that the electricity was lost because the electric line from my house, which you'll see on that little map there, goes over to the lot next door that Mr. White was building, runs up that person's lot, and then comes back onto my property. It was severed when Mr. White's crew was doing site work in the backyard. After being notified, it took Mr. White over 14 days to repair the line. Mr. White was notified of the breakage, and he failed to return multiple calls and text messages to get it fixed. Again, his lack of failure to timely perform caused us to be without the use of the garage and pool for over 2 weeks. Mr. White subsequently promised to move the electrical line, who would think, back onto our property. After almost a dozen requests were either unanswered or unfulfilled, Mr. White finally made arrangements to move the electrical line back to our property over 6 months later. Another example of Mr. White's poor workmanship as a contractor is that he did not have the proper equipment to move the electrical line, and more importantly, his crew was going to bury the new electrical line under the driveway without placing the line in electrical conduit. At our expense, we had the electrician complete the installation of the new electrical line by putting the electrical line into conduit tubing under my driveway. On February 15th of this year, we needed to do some plumbing work to my house. My house manager and the plumber tried to find the water cutoff in front of the house. After an hour and a half of looking, they couldn't find it, and they called me, and I looked up the Alta survey, and I told them where the water cutoff was. I shouldn't have been shocked at the time, but the water cutoff was buried under the privet hedges in front of the house. That's supposed to be accessible to all parties, and it was covered up. My dealings with Mr. White and his company, Georgia Builders, over the last 16 months have been nothing less than disgraceful. Mr. White has been untruthful, evaded responsibility for warranty work to the house, and generally conducted himself in an unprofessional and illegal manner, to the point we recently filed a police report that Mr. White had tapped into my sprinkler system and was watering the trees and shrubs on the house he was building immediately next door to me. Mr. White's excuses are his typical tactic when confronted with these types of accusations. But at the end of the day, it's Mr. White's responsibility and professional and moral obligation to make sure the work that he is doing for citizens of the village and town are in accordance with the plans, specifications, and codes approved by the village and town, especially those pertaining to life safety. He and he alone bears the responsibility for this work, and he alone should bear the consequences of having his license revoked. I don't take these allegations against Mr. White lightly, nor do I bring his egregious behavior to your attention without the confidence and support of written correspondence which I've given you, either through mail, email, or text, witnesses which you will hear from, and other documentation if required. This is not about whether I like or dislike Mr. White. This is about repeated documented violations of Section 143-11 and Section 777 of the General Business Law of the State of New York. Based upon my experience as outlined in this testimony, this board or any reasonable person would find Mr. White and Georgia Builders materially violated the provisions of Section 143-11B, number 3, by being untrustworthy. Number 4, failing to timely perform or complete his contracts without fraud or bad faith. 8, being in violation of any provision of the article. So the fact that he's violated one article is enough. willfully deviating from or disregarding the plans and specifications in any material respect. 14, willfully or deliberately disregarding and or violating the building, fire, and health laws of the town of Southampton. And 17, he failed to conduct home improvements in a skillful manner. In conclusion, my sole purpose is to ask this board to take action against Mr. White and revoke his license in order to protect future citizens of Southampton from the disappointment, false truths, false promises, use of inferior building materials, and most importantly, the potential of being placed in a home built by Mr. White that would put the safety of your family in peril due to Mr. White's repeated disregard for building codes, best methods, and professionalism. Any
Thank you.
questions?
Do you have any witnesses?
I have multiple. Tommy? I have several witnesses.
Okay,
Tommy's next.
you wanna come up? You state your name, address.
Thomas Andrews, 346 Toomey Avenue, Calverton, New York.
And we'll need to raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth with knowledge of penalties for perjury?
I do.
Please begin.
When I got out of the Marine Corps, I decided to get into property management about 15 years ago. I've been doing it for a long time, every day, all day. After getting hired by the Fink family in February of 2022, I had extensive first-hand experience with the allegations Mr. Fink has brought before this board. In particular, I have observed and documented Mr. White's team using without permission the electricity from the Fink home to power tools and equipment last summer while Mr. White was building the house next door. Excuse me. I was on site on or about May 5th, 2022, when the electric to Mr. Fink's property and garage was lost. After several days of investigation, the electrical line was severed by a excavation machine. I personally oversaw the relocation and washer of dryer. I personally was involved in overseeing plumbing. All of the things were being changed for an issue.
Can you speak into the mic, please? Oh, you done? Okay, thank you. Mr. Benacasa? In relation to the violations, can I ask one question? Were any COs issued for this house? Who?
Let's just swear him in first.
Excuse me?
Let's swear him in.
Oh, swear me. I'm sorry.
Hi,
Mr.
Michael Benincasa, 36 Landing Lane, East Quogue.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth with knowledge of penalties for perjury?
I do.
Please begin.
To your knowledge, have they received any COs for the
No.
electrical inspections and so on since the complaint has been issued?
No. The home is in the village. So the village issued the CO, and the electrical inspection was done by the town of Southampton electrical inspectors, because the town of Southampton inspectors do the electrical inspections for the village. So, and there was an electrical inspection done on at home, and it was approved. And on their checklist, it showed, it has the count of all the devices in the home, whether they be breakers or outlets, switches. And in that list, there were, and I forget the number, it was a year ago, there were arc fault breakers listed on that. So I called the electrical inspector, and
Excuse me, excuse me.
We can't ask
You have an opportunity to talk. No, not now, not from the floor. Thank you.
so I called the electrical inspector just to verify that they were there, because people make mistakes. Normally not when they list an exact number of fixtures on their checklist. He said they were definitely there. He took it upon himself to call the electrical installer, and at first he denied, and then he fessed up that he took him out, as Mr. Fink described. And And then apparently he went back and put them in. So egregious act, in my view. Just let me just step back a little bit, just most of you folks know me, but my qualifications are, I was a state certified building inspector for 25 years. 18 of those were as chief building inspector of the town of Southampton. I retired in 2020.
Can you speak into the mic?
Yep.
Oh, is it-
Okay.
Can't hear. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Turn it up, Charlie.
So, so I retired in 2020. I was asked to do the inspection by Mr. Fink at request of his attorney, Adam Miller. And when I first met Mr. Fink, he was very upset about what was going on in his home. And so I started my inspection, and I stopped my inspections in the basement, worked my way up. One of the first things I did see were, I opened up the panel, and there were no arc faults in the breaker. So right then and there, I said, okay, this is going to be a very interesting inspection. So that was one of the first things I've seen. There were some issues that I found that typically if you go through houses, you'll find handrails not meeting the code. Handrails have a very specific dimensional requirement now. A lot of the builders don't know that. Okay, the inspector picks it up, it gets corrected. There were a few sinks in the house that weren't draining properly. There was some pitch issues on the pipe. Without opening up the walls, I really couldn't tell, except that they were draining very slowly. The kitchen sink wasn't vented well, there was no vent on the kitchen sink. And I believe there was a S-trap, which are illegal. It siphons the water out of the traps, if not vented properly. Kind of an easy fix. You do air admittance valve underneath the sink and remedies it, but it wasn't done. Up in the attic, there were the venting issues as described by Mr. Fink. I'm not going to go through it again for you in the interest of time. But there was a 12-wire electrical wire that was wire nutted together, just hanging from the ceiling without a box. A gross violation of the National Electric Code. But something that is Electric 101. I mean, I don't know who did that, whether it was, a subsequent contractor, but it shouldn't have been like that. As Mr. Fink described, the venting of the attic, they were foamed over, and it's like, okay, they should have found them and invented the bath fans to the outside of the home, because as Mr. Fink described, it could produce mold up in the attic because you're taking hot shower air, throwing it up into a unvented attic, where the moisture would just accumulate and in the summertime most likely grow mold. Let's see, there was an air handler that was drained, the condensation line was drained right into the plumbing pipe, which is a violation of the state sanitary code because the condensate is acidic. So when you dump that acidic water into a wasteline, it ends up into your septic system, and I don't remember if this one had an advanced septic system. We have a little ecosystem growing in there. If you dump acidic water in it, it kills that ecosystem and just renders that system useless as far as the breakdown of the nitrogen. As well as if there's any metal plumbing in that system, the acidic condensate will rot that pipe out. And how do I know that? Well, the code says it, but in my own home, 8 years ago, the plumber vented or drained my Instahot with copper. 8 years later, I'm noticing some water on my utility room floor. The copper line was totally rotted through. So a lot of the codes, we don't always get to see the result of something like that, but I did firsthand. I was kind of amazed myself after such a short time having what you would think would be clean water rotting out a copper pipe. That's pretty much it for the minor things, but the two most disturbing things for me were the removal of the arc fault breakers and the venting of the dryer into an unvented space. Those two things shouldn't have happened, and like Mr. Fink described, they are a health issue as well as fire hazard. I do support Mr. Fink in his endeavors here today, because for 25 years, you know, my job was to protect the health and safety of the people of our community, and not often do we get to stand up and do that with the support of a homeowner. And so he's put a lot of time and effort into this, and I think that his efforts are warranted. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Any other witnesses?
State your name and address for the record,
Josh Guberman, 1001 Park Avenue, New York, New York.
and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth with knowledge of penalties of perjury?
Yes, I do.
Please begin.
Thank you, board members. I'm just going to, if it's okay, I'm going to read a brief statement. And I just want to preface it by saying I'm going to provide more of a narrative of my experience and my wife's experience with Mr. White, so maybe you can give context to the more technical things that they spoke about. So that would be great if I could do that.
Go ahead.
Okay. I first met Mike White in 2010. He was the builder on a large home on Little Noyack Path, which was the subject of a receivership. Unfortunately, I was unsuccessful in buying the house, but it gave me a chance to meet Mr. White for the first time. Mr. White was personable, kind, warm, seemingly knowledgeable, and had this very clear sort of aw shucks attitude of being this big bear of a guy that's honest and true. He basically said he just wants to build houses and doesn't want to be involved in anything contentious. He seemed remarkably sincere and honest. As the years went by, however, it would be clear that I had the wrong assessment of this person, wrong indeed. Before he revealed himself as a con man, fraudster, negligent builder, our relationship deepened. He made me aware that he had a single-family home on Pelham Street, which had not sold in over a year and was languishing on the market. He also shared that he was financially destitute, running through that terrible recession, and desperately needed money to satisfy mortgage payments and lenders. I believed him, and he seemed so sincere that I lent him $500,000 and, more importantly, staged this Pelham home and guided it to a timely sale. That led to my calling him in 2013 when I purchased a home for development in Watermill. I felt very comfortable using Mr. White, and on the outside, it looked like his work was of high quality, but I did not know what lay underneath, and what seems to be fine work, I would find out later, was poor craftsmanship and violation of many codes. Mike brought his personal manner to the job, and at the outset did a credible job for the first few weeks. I had no idea that he was completely incompetent and incapable of finishing any project. And at the end, when I terminated him, he gave me, out of nowhere, a bill for $280,000 for alleged extras, which was fraudulent and had never been approved. At this point, I just wanted to finish the house, so Mike and I parted ways amicably, and I had my construction team from the city come out and finish the house. This was a painful and arduous task, as Mike had cut every possible corner on every level and left the most difficult part of the job without completing the most difficult and tough work needed to close it out and get a C of O. My team brought to my attention numerous construction defects, leaks, electrical shorts, use of improper materials, and a whole variety of other issues which cost tens of thousands of dollars to remedy. It was, in short, a disaster. As I said, we left on relatively good terms, and I didn't speak to Mr. White for a couple of years until my broker brought to my attention a home on Bishop's Lane that was for sale. It had grandfathered tennis court, which was the most appealing thing as my wife is an avid tennis player. Surprisingly, my broker told me that Mike White claimed to own the property and that I would have to deal with him on some level if I wanted to purchase the house. This again led me to another deception and dishonest statement, as his partner of sorts, Mr. Doug Davis, and his sons owned it. Mike was not on the title and had no conditions that he was in any way connected with the ownership of the property. I let bygones be bygones, and my wife agreed to meet him on site despite my obvious concern. At that time, he was tremendously apologetic and owned up to all of his past mistakes and errors in an honest and forthright way, and he talked about the things he had done wrong on the watermill project. He told my wife and I that he had turned over a new leaf and that he had fired his staff and hired a new competent team, and his business was not what it used to be, and that he was operating in a code-compliant, professional, and proper manner. We ended up making a deal with the devil because it was the only lot available in the village with tennis. So after hearing Mike, my wife Megan and I made the decision to try to work with him for the construction, as he said it was only going to come with a package if we wanted to buy the land itself. What ensued was 7 months of agony and pain, literally, as well as frustration, as Mike failed on almost every level to execute this job and to do it properly. Given that I had that experience with him and just thought he was a sloppy businessman but a good guy, when we did the watermill project, I created a 70-page spec list, which had everything down to the hinge size and type of pool heater. I figured if I provided a detailed template, he could operate properly and be accountable, since everything was so clearly laid out for him. I couldn't have been more wrong. As the weeks went by, all he did was drain my bank account and demand more and more money if I wanted to finish the job by the summer season. I kept funding the job despite seeing some glaring errors, construction defects, including Mike White misreading the blueprints and, more importantly, not providing critical transom windows or structural support for them, and he failed to grade the property, which was at a 14-foot slant and was a critical issue. Among the many other code violations were a rubber roof that was not terminated properly, vents that were not terminated through the roof properly, and more dangerous issues that I'll get into later. Moreover, he misread the plans and made 3 critical errors on the size of the walkouts and the tennis court, shrinking them by almost 5 feet. As I spoke to him about the grading issue, he left huge mounds of dirt on the site throughout the project so no one could see what the grade was. But finally, in early March, when Megan and I were fed up and about to terminate him, I demanded to see what the grade was. As expected, it was 8 feet off, and we had to build $30,000 worth of retaining walls at our own cost and expense to stabilize thousands of pounds of soil. After termination, despite owing me a 6-figure amount to remedy all of his construction failures, which included 25 leaks, myriad electrical shorts, waterproofing issues, roof defects, framing issues, HVAC problems, he leaned the project for $385,000, which we had to bond and await the outcome of a court case to get our money back. Thus ensued 5 years of a costly litigation, which ended earlier this year. Thankfully, the judge threw out all of White's claims and shut down the lien, and it was over. I'm here today in an effort to make White accountable, finally, for his devious and fraudulent conduct as a builder and complete disregard for state and local codes and even the most basic construction standards. I hope our efforts today will stop future clients from suffering the same fate as we did. I spoke to several of his contractors, including his flooring contractor, Gary Abraham, his garage installer, and other folks that had worked with him, and they basically wanted to put him in the rearview mirror, as did the 3 clients I spoke to him. They wished me luck and they wished Mr. Fink luck, but they did not want to reopen this wound. He should not be allowed to practice construction, and while I know that it seems like a harsh action to remove somebody's license, in this case, it is merited. White claims to have built over 200 homes in the last 30 years, as he will brag. However, I could not find one house that he completed or one customer that would provide a reference or state he is a quality builder or that he has actually completed a home to the customer's satisfaction through the C of O process. These people had endured the same horrific experience as we had, but despite the trail of wreckage, Michael is able to continue to practice construction because this is a seasonal community, as you know, and White finds new customers and new subcontractors who don't know his background. He has a company that scrubs the internet and removes all damaging and negative references, including the lawsuits and claims against him, so no one is aware of his background. I'm asking the board to take the appropriate step, which would be to terminate his license and make sure he does not create more victims, which I know the board will not be happy with. Thank you for listening to our story, and we appreciate your time and energy to take this matter as seriously as it deserves to be taken. We need to stop Mr. White from causing the damage he has caused on so many occasions and the pain he has caused so many of his victims. My wife wanted me to add a couple of technical things which I missed, which were the damage Mr. White caused as we tried to secure a construction loan. Mr. White failed to provide the lien waivers that were necessary or any insurance certificates showing that the job was properly insured or any of the paperwork that the bank required. He claimed erroneously that we were asking for something that was not something we deserved. It was incredulous. I also wanted to add that he has changed companies and changed locations several times. He was Georgica Pond Builders, he's Georgica Builders now. It is an effort to deceive and make it difficult to take any action against him. I'm assuming that if you take away his permit, he will find another person with a permit to practice his deception, but I'm hoping that the board can do something to take action to stop this. Please do not allow Mr. White to leave this trail of despondent customers and subcontractors. Today is the day where after 25 years, we can get some accountability, and we ask that the board use this opportunity to finally shut him down. On the details, it was ironic that Mr. Fink spoke about the termination of the vent for the dryer. Our basement dryer was not working properly, so we traced it and saw where it terminated out of the house. Upon further inspection, it was clear that a terrible safety condition was created because Mr. White had not removed the round wood cutout that was used by a hole saw to terminate the dryer vent. As you know, that is a terrible, terrible danger for safety. Also, the breakers, just like Mr. Fink, that were not installed, which they required arc fault breakers, and they were never installed. So the last thing I just wanted to say on a more technical note, Mr. White went to the Board of Health. As you know, the Board of Health is required to get a permit. You need to get your septic system reviewed. When my wife and I went to Suffolk County because we had issues with getting the septic system approved, they pulled out plans that were another house that White had designed, which only had 4 bedrooms. He used this house to get a septic system, and the septic system quantity and size, even though I required something that was 2 times as much. It later led to tens of thousands of dollars and disruption of our home to get this done. I don't want to go on more and more because I think you get the flavor and idea behind what our feelings are about this person. It's not personal animus, but at this point, it's just protection from other people's for their safety and their dollars. Thank you very much, Board.
One question.
Yes.
You never filed a complaint against Mr. White?
I didn't know where to file a complaint or what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I have a myriad emails and
No, I
documentation.
just want to know if you ever filed a complaint.
Right. And I asked Mr. Foster, who was the lead chief inspector for the village, and he said, oh, you know, Mike just does that, and, you know, we all know he's a scam artist, but we can't do anything about him. So I figured I couldn't do anything about it.
Okay.
And when I was told by Mr. Fink that today may be the day of accountability, I volunteered. My wife and I came out, drove out to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
One follow-up.
Okay.
Are you a witness to anything in Mr. Fink's home?
No, I just saw the technical details and did not physically see his home. His home, interestingly enough, is 300 feet from the home that Mr. White was fired from. So I'm at 136 Bishop's Lane, he's at 185.
Understood. This petition involves allegations at Mr. Fink's home. It may be appropriate for you to file your own petition, so the board may consider your testimony today.
Okay.
Okay?
I'll bring the engineer and I'll bring the.
Just after the meeting, stop in with the board secretary
Mr.
and
Fink,
inquire
excuse
about
me?
Happy to do
how to
that.
follow your own. Okay?
Who, you have somebody else?
Francis.
Oh,
Just at the
does she want to
podium.
testify?
I do.
Okay, come on up. It looks like you have a big folder there. Make it short and sweet.
And same thing, name and address for the record, please.
Frances Genovese, 209 Bishop's Lane, Southampton.
And Ms. Genovese, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth with the knowledge of penalties for perjury?
I do.
Please begin.
I'm here to add my voice to these complaints, although it may seem insignificant. Mr. White not only brings injury to the homeowners that he deals with, he brings to the neighbors in the community that are unlucky enough to be next to, in my case, one of his constructions. I would like to say that I would like to underscore that he has demonstrated repeatedly in both intent and practice a willful disregard of codes, regulations, conditions, and prohibitions. Anything that interferes with what he wants to do is considered not proper for him to deal with. In my instance particularly, my property abuts, unfortunately, on the northern side, his property. He entered the property, it was a subdivision, a 2-acre subdivision in which he spent 5 years developing 2 houses. He entered the property and removed the survey stakes between the property. He refused to reestablish them, even though his so-called partners, who are the owners of the house, insisted that they would be done immediately. He dumped mounds, as has been stated here, he dumped mounds of dirt and sand on the border so that it was always unclear what the border was. He brought heavy equipment. He used it as a construction site for many of his buildings. That was next door to me. He jammed heavy machinery into the mature trees and shrubs on my property, and he consistently removed, when the building inspectors in the village were called and raced to try to put up any kind of a barrier, he consistently refused it. He was arrogant and aggressive. And when he appeared before the ARB in the village, he was granted, this was in 2021, he was granted a building permit conditioned by his preserving the existing plotted mature trees, which were mainly on my property, but interfered with his side garage, which didn't have an adequate turning radius, nor could it accommodate his heavy machinery. On the 2021, June 28th, they gave him his building permit, despite a lot of objections. They gave him his building permit conditioned on the trees were plotted and they had to exist. On November 19th, he came in and he removed all the trees, came onto the property, constantly trespassed. I have videos, I have any kind of proof you want that. In subsequent appearances before the ARB, he interrupted the hearings, he was provocative, he vilified me when I tried to refer to the fact that these were plotted trees, and he never, ever attempted to replace them as he was required to. Finally, I offered him and his partner $3,000 for which was basically $25,000 to $30,000 worth of damage. I offered him a $3,000 replacement trees, which I had found. His partner finally agreed to it and attached to the agreement a 3-page gag order that he had drafted, which was, would have made Stormy Daniels hide. He wanted none of his properties could ever be discussed. The houses could never be discussed. Just the usual arrogance. To attest to his character, there are numerous Southampton press reports of him painting the house on Woolley Street, which was a famous thing. He's on record, his position on these things. However, this is the report pulled from the village police this is an arrest record, violations, and in many cases, menacing, which is what he does. I think...
Wait, excuse me, you'll have your opportunity. Please, Okay, just, you have the opportunity.
December 28th, 2021, police officer Stetler reports one subject under arrest. That refers to Mr. White.
Yeah, okay, I don't think
Okay.
we have to, we don't have to go
Alright.
through
For the
that
scope
whole
of this
thing.
hearing,
No, I
again-
don't
If you
wanna
wanna
go through
submit
the whole
that-
thing.
If I may interrupt.
I only need to show you the bulk of it.
No.
This is 10 years.
This is the
of-
licensing review board. They have jurisdiction to suspend, revoke, or take no action on a contractor
Okay.
license.
I'm
If we can keep to
requesting-
the scope of, are you a character witness for Mr. Fink's home? Are you,
I'm a character witness for myself.
okay.
And this to continue to allow him to operate as he does, and to make comments, as was referred to, the comments that Mr. Foster, for instance, made. Oh, we know, I hear that every day from the current building inspector, which is why I pursued this week, I couldn't reach you, but I pursued the disposition of the reciprocal agreement that you had with the village. It's been laying since February unsigned, and we need it.
So for sake of clarity, the town received this agreement June 9th. So on the last town board meeting of the month, I anticipate the town board would pass a resolution.
I see February
authorizing-
9th, but I bow to your record keeping. The reason I bring this to your attention is this is the record. I don't even want to carry it. It weighs about 10
Okay,
pounds.
but we don't wanna get into the character. Okay, thank you.
Is it enough, though, to establish character?
Thank you, excuse me?
Is it enough to establish character or lack thereof?
We already heard enough.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
testimony. Okay, Mr. White, your turn.
Yes, thank you. My name's Michael White.
Wait, go ahead.
And address?
276 North Main Street, Southampton, New
Please
York.
raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth with the knowledge of penalties for perjury?
Yes, I do.
Please begin.
All right, so, oh, I'm sorry.
Be able to hear you?
Oh, okay, thank you. So, this house on 191 Bishop's Lane, I built as a spec house for myself at the time. I had 2 lots there. I built the house, I lived there for a couple months, then during the pandemic, I rented it. I had a mortgage on it, I couldn't refinance it, so I rented it to pay the mortgage. This house, after I rented it this season, Mr. Fink purchased the house from an entity called Emanon South. Emanon South is the builder. Georgia Builders is not the builder. You don't need a license in New York State to build a house. You know, I don't know, there's no agreement. I'd like to show you an escrow agreement. This is like part of the issue. And this is, by the way, this is Mr. Fink's his thing where it clarifies that there was a punch list and there was $10,000 left in escrow. And it clearly says on there that he would pay Emanon South, they would release $2,500 after I fixed a central vacuum system, which I did. He refused to pay it. I said to my lawyer, I said, what should I do? He's like, well, do the rest of the list, see if he pays you, right?
Yeah,
I did the rest of the list. The one thing I couldn't get him is a set of building plans because they belong to the architect. He wouldn't release a full set because they're copyrighted and they were his. But I completed everything on that list. Then he comes up with list number 2. And I said to him, I said, listen, anything legit, and I have no reason to have to fix any of that. So I said, listen, I'll fix anything you want. Just release the first money. No, I don't want to do it. So later on, I start building a house next door. Now this lot was subdivided. So the electric line ran on the property line. So when we dug this foundation next door, it undermined it and the wire fell out and it broke. I repaired it and I spoke with Mr. Fink and I said, I'm gonna have to rip up your driveway to put this back in. So we left it on the neighbor's property for the summer. I mean, I didn't think he would want his property. As soon as the summer was over, I put the wire back in. As far as stealing water, I mean, it was hooked up to that sprinkler system. There were a row of hedges with a drip line, and we probably didn't disconnect it. I mean, like I said, that was our property also, so there was a drip line on it. I mean, if he wants $100 for water, I'll give it to him. You know, I just, you know, I don't understand what he wants. You know, he keeps, you know, and then we have to hear Mike Benicassi, he's telling us about
a condensation line, right? I lived in that house, and I had a flood because the water was running into the gutter, and the gutter got clogged. So I put it into the vent line. And he's wrong about the code. The code clearly says that you can put water into a pump, into a septic pump, a basement pump, and you could put it into your septic system. That's not true what he said. I mean, maybe the vent line upstairs, maybe that's not the best place to put it, but I didn't want that to freeze up or get clogged and have a problem with water again going into the pan from condensation. You know, it's possible. I never had the opportunity to see the vents for the fans. I would have fixed those, but there wasn't going to be mold in there. Those ceilings now, they're controlled spaces now. They have what they call a hot roof. They're all conditioned air. You weren't going to have mold, but if I would have had the opportunity, I would have fixed it. You know, this was basically go find whatever we can find and let's pin it on him and let's not give him back his $10,000. And what he said about Mark is not true either, because Mark called me and he said, I haven't, by the way, I haven't ever had a complaint. I've been in business for 35 years. Now, Mark called me up and he said, he goes, whatever you want to tell me, you could tell me. He said, if you want to settle this to end it, he goes, I'm not sure if we have jurisdiction or not. He goes, what would you like to do? And I said, well, there's $10,000 owed. To get it over with, I'm willing to give him $5,000. He didn't ask me to give him any money. He didn't tell me to do anything. I told him my story. He's like, all right, I'll ask him if that's acceptable. He's not taking my side. You know, I barely know Mark. I mean, he just wanted to rectify it so he didn't have to go through this circus. You know, as far as Josh Guberman, I mean, I built one house for him. He made $3 million on Pheasant Close. He buys a lot from me. By the way, I owned a third of it. I don't know why you think I didn't own a lot that he bought.
Okay, not in between. Just
So-
make your case.
So we're still in litigation because he wanted a technicality. So now it's in the appellate court, and we're going to bring it back to the Supreme Court. He owed me over. He gets 3/4 of the way through the house.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
We're here about Mr. Fink's complaint.
I know, but I'm trying to
Okay,
defend
but
myself.
now let's get off of that.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Answer a couple of questions. What was the story with the electrical wiring?
That I have no idea. I'm not. I wasn't the
You were the
electrician.
contractor, right?
I didn't have access to the house. There was a CO
No,
on that
no,
house, okay? For 2 years. No, not 2 years. It was finished for 2 years. I did not have access to that house. I had to call his house watcher. I don't know where he is. But, you know, by the way, who doesn't have a license to do anything? And he's testifying towards what's right and wrong. You know, so I had no access to even go in the house. We had to call him, and Kevin could explain that in a while. You know, we'd ask to go in the house. Oh, I got to call the house watcher, this and that. And every house, as you guys know, has a punch list. And I did it. I didn't have to do it. It wasn't a new house, you know? And I gave him a warranty to be nice to him, you know? And I would have done whatever he asked. But he wants to be litigious. He doesn't want to go to court because he wouldn't win. I can't believe that he came here because Georgia Builder has not been contractual with him for anything. Never. Georgia Builders has never gotten a penny, never had a contract. And not only that, there is no jurisdiction of this board in Southampton Village. It's the Suffolk County.
We're Southampton. We're not ruling on the village yet.
Right,
That's going to come up,
right.
as the attorney told you earlier.
But
The
as,
agreement has been signed. We're waiting for the final agreement from the town supervisor.
right, but this
Okay,
happened
but
prior.
let's get to the point.
So the point is that as you can see there with that document, the deal was between Emanon South and David Fink. That's who it's between.
Well, who's Emanon South?
That's who built the house. That's who owns the house.
And where do you stand there?
I own part of Emanon South.
Okay, so you're a part owner
Of what? A new house?
of Emanon South, right?
Right? But
Okay.
what does
so-
it have to do with Georgia Builders?
I think the complaint is against Georgia Builders
And Mike White.
and Mike White. It's
Okay.
against you
Okay.
and Georgia Cabela.
Okay.
Georgia Cabela is
Well-
named in it, but it's against you.
Right, so you're named as a licensed contractor before this board. If you can respond to Mr. Fink's allegations of 143, 11, 3, 4, 8, 14, and 17, as well as General Business Law 777, your position and what you're asking of this board, please.
What I'm asking is to look at this as a contractual dispute, look at it as a money issue. There's money that hasn't been returned. It says clearly in that document, he's supposed to return $2,500 the day I finished the vacuum. We went there, we fixed the vacuum. By accident, they covered a couple plates. I did some other work. He refused to give back the money. And in his own writing, he's telling you that nothing's completed. You guys, I mean, I handed this to you, but look, this is his document, all
But
completed.
There'll be copies made and dispersed to board members.
Okay.
Right now, you're still building a record. If you can specifically respond to, I said before, this board has jurisdiction to suspend, revoke, or take no action against your license. If you can tell them which of those things you're asking them to do,
No action.
thank you.
I don't believe I did anything wrong. I mean, I was willing, up until, you know, the contact was lost, to do whatever he wanted. I moved the electrical line, I did whatever he asked me to do. I did his line. But I've been doing this too long to know, when you complete one punch list and there's another one, it's never gonna end. And that's why he should have gave me my money, and I would have did whatever he wanted. And I just finished the house next door, I got a CO. I wish I would have bought them there. There's no problems. They're perfectly happy. I've built hundreds of houses, and I have no issues. I haven't ever been before this board. I've had a license since I think I'm 19. And I just, you know, this is like, I can't even believe what's going on right now.
According to the town code that was Sean brought up, will you answer the questions that Sean asked you about those code issues?
Right. They've alleged various violations of the town code. How are you responding to those violations?
I haven't seen them. And I have a CO for the house. So they were inspected. If there was another issue, I told him I would fix them. But I fixed his first sheet, and then he wanted another sheet of things that weren't code violations. And he's also telling us hearsay. You know, we're listening to,
So this is an administrative hearing before an administrative board, not a court. So the rules of evidence are not going to apply here. Is it safe to say your position is a denial of allegations, and you're requesting no action?
I'm requesting no action because I had no opportunity to see what those were. I mean, knock on wood, I haven't ever had any health or safety issues, nothing. I mean, that house had I don't know what he's talking about a fire system. That system is integrated with batteries and it's hardwired. I don't know what he's talking about. Every bedroom had a fire smoke detector, carbon monoxide, everything, every safety thing was in there, along with the pool alarms, everything.
Well, I don't think he said that. He just upgraded his system. I don't think he stated that it was not operable or was not correct. I think he was am I correct in that? Just quickly,
Yes, I upgraded.
you upgraded, that's all you did, okay. Okay.
But I didn't want it to seem like I did something that wasn't to code or something. I
Well, he
mean,
didn't say that.
Oh, all right. No, I just didn't want to understand.
On the fire issue, the
Right.
fire law.
Okay. All right.
Okay, any other?
No, I mean, I have multiple houses going now, and I don't have problems. You know, I have problems with people that want to be litigious. I mean, or
Okay.
there's money issues. That's always what it's about.
Anybody on the board have any questions besides Mark?
Nope.
Anne Marie? No? No? Okay, any others, that's it?
I mean, if you want me to clarify anything, that's really
Well, I
it.
just asked a few questions, yeah,
Okay. All right.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a
Thank you.
follow-up. I'll be very quick.
Okay,
Well, is
Mr.
there anybody else looking to testify?
excuse me?
Um,
Oh,
For the
you have a
first time.
witness, hold on, Mr. Okay, sorry.
Please
Hi,
state
my
your
name's-
name and address.
My name's Kevin Pollock. I live at 300 Ontario Street in Ronkonkoma, New York.
Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth with knowledge of penalties for perjury?
I do.
Please begin.
The only thing I got involved with this, I'm an agent of M&On South. I also work for Georgia Builders. I basically work for Mike White. I got involved with Mr. Fink with this punch list that came out, and basically from the time I got the punch list, we got on with all the issues right away, and we took care of them as fast as we could. Everything got taken care of pretty quick. As you can see, everything on that list was more complete, and that's pretty much it as far as that house goes.
What's your capacity as an employee of each of those respective companies?
I'm a project manager.
For all entities?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions? No, thank you.
I just have a follow-up real quick.
Mr. Fink? Yep,
Copy of the police report I filed for the water.
right, we got that.
And then, sorry. And Mr. White claimed that if he would have known about the items that were defective, he would have fixed them. My attorney sent him and his attorney an email on August 30th, 2022, which I will give to you.
We have it in this packet?
We
Mr.
have
White,
that.
Mr. White, I don't, what's in there somewhere, I just want to make sure, because he said if he would have known about it, he would have fixed it. He knew about it on August 30th, didn't fix anything. So he's not being truthful. And as far as the escrow punch list, it's not complete. So he can claim it's complete, but it's not complete. So there are items on there that still have to be done. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. White?
Just quickly, like I said, I gave you the punch list that shows that's his punch list, that's his email. I told him, and the offer still stands, I would have fixed whatever he wanted if he did what he was supposed to do. He was supposed to return the escrow when the first punch list was done. And he made another one, and I've been doing this too long. I mean, you could literally spend the rest of your life having people hold money over you to keep doing punch lists. And I just finished a house next to him, and I have a punch list, and I've done more than the punch list. I've done everything, down to planting flowers for them. And, it's absurd that he says that. And after all the houses I've built with the testimony, you think there'd be more than 2 people that would come up here in 35 years and say they had a problem with me. I mean, they don't know about the licensing review board. I mean, that's very hard to believe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is it based
Still
upon,
sworn? Yes.
Mr. White depends on people not reporting him. And I want to just say one fact. Mr. White has testified that he's produced hundreds of homes in the last 35 years. I asked the board to request that Mr. White provide only five, satisfied customers that he has built their house and gotten a C of O. So this deception doesn't have to end. It's facts and evidence. We'd like 5 people who have houses built by him where they're happy that it has been completed. And he will not be able to provide it, but I'd love to see those witnesses come in.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
One more?
Any other testimony?
I'd like to ask a question.
Step up.
Come on up.
And you two are also still sworn. So please,
sorry?
you're still sworn, so please begin.
As a member of the community, I'm very confused as to how your board operates. But I do know this, that by not regulating this person, by not looking at a record that was compiled by the police, or looking at the ARB and the village records that show every time that he has violated something that has, for instance, a house on Lewis Street where he built against all prohibition, a balcony, which he was informed ahead of time he could not do. There's a record as long and as heavy as what I brought to you. No one chooses to review it here today, and this is the result of this.
No one said not to review it.
We
We
didn't
asked
say
you
we're
to
not
submit
reviewing
it.
it.
Oh.
asked you to
We're
submit it,
here.
not
Do you
read
want
it.
me to submit 7 copies of that?
No, one copy to our.
Just
we
give
asked you
one
submit
copy
it.
to
We
us.
said we
Oh, I'm
weren't reading
sorry,
it.
then I
So,
didn't hear
To clarify
that.
the record, we're not saying we're not looking at stuff. We
Okay.
look at everything, and we said submit it. so that everybody can
I'm
look at
glad
it.
to get the weight off my
No, what
back.
I asked you was when you had that, I said, are you gonna submit that as evidence?
I'm sorry, I
Not
didn't
reading.
hear
Okay,
it.
that's what I asked, so.
But because I think you have to be made aware.
Okay, well, submit that as evidence and we'll look at it. and-
Fine, I will do that. But you understand that by not taking action, by constantly giving people like Mr. White the benefit of the doubt, you put the onus on the public. We have to litigate against him. We have to correct everything.
Okay.
We need the regulation.
Thank you.
One second.
Go ahead.
I don't know, bringing up a house that I built for somebody that asked me to do something is, I mean, I haven't ever been arrested, I haven't ever gone to jail, I haven't ever done anything. She's talking about somebody was trespassing on Bishop's one time and they got arrested. And she's saying, I got arrested. Like, it's ridiculous.
Okay, well, we're gonna review that, okay?
I mean,
Let's not get into characters.
George Benedict had to give her 80 grand to go away
Okay.
when he built
Okay.
his.
Okay,
This is what
stop,
I need.
please.
Ma'am,
Why?
you need this, please.
I will not allow this man to vilify me. He's a criminal, a psychopath, and a
Okay,
liar.
thank you, thank you.
Put it
Okay,
on the record.
At this point, I'd like to
Carry it over for all.
carry this meeting over till we hear from the village and get a situation there. We'll notify all parties when we have another hearing, but at this point, we're just gonna keep the hearing open until next time. Okay, thank you all for coming in, and we'll move on with other business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. White, I'm just gonna have you stay, I'll give you a copy of what was submitted by Mr. Fink.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have anything to say?
I don't
Did you
know.
have business? No, okay.
Okay,
She works for the town.
let's move on. Next order of business.
Before we move forward, I'm just gonna hold it over to July 12th.
Okay, very good, thank
Should we be
you.
here?
I'm just
We're
gonna
done
have you
with you,
wait till
yeah?
I get copies of what Mr. Fink submitted to us. I will give you a copy so you have it for the record. So
Should
you
we
can
be
just-
here the 12th?
You'll receive a notice from the
Okay.
board.
Should we bring more testimony, or?
If you're inclined to, you may.
Yeah, I could bring homeowners. I didn't know it was like this type of forum, like the whole town was coming.
Well, so these are public meetings. This petition is Mr. Fink versus Georgia Builders. The scope is this complaint before this
Okay.
board.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next order of business.
I just have one more to review.
Who?
I have one more to review.
I'm not doing that. We have a new complaint, Russell, against, I can't pronounce it.
So it's
Brother
Sandy Russell
Pools.
versus 001635-0, Minogue Brothers Swimming Pool Care, re Michael G. Minogue.
Okay. Who would like that one?
Where is this located?
I'm not giving it to you, Mark.
Where's it located?
Southampton.
I can take it.
Okay, Henry will take that one, and then we have another one, Collins against Dunright Home
My
Improvement.
apologies, I'm so sorry. Who did you assign the Russell case to? Annie,
Anne
thank
Marie.
you.
Dunright. How about you, Sean? You got nothing to do,
Sean will take it.
besides looking at your phone.
Sean's taking it.
We'll give it to Sean.
Oh, you said Sean.
Oh, Sean.
Yeah,
I'm
he'll
sorry.
take it. I
Give it
said
to
yes.
Sean.
He's gonna get it one way or another.
I'll take it.
Too long a meeting. You'll take it.
I'll take it.
Okay,
I recharged per page for that.
okay.
I will get it returned as well.
Now, next
Excellent,
order of
thank you.
business.
Thank you.
Anne Marie's working on the last ones.
Yeah, no, I know.
We have 3 applicants that we couldn't vote on because we didn't have a quorum. And the 3 are Farrell
That's me.
Building
That's yours.
Corporation is one. I'd like to get a vote on their application for a license. Brian, you can't vote on it? Correct.
What do,
Uh,
repeat who that's for?
Farrell Builders.
I'll be
We're
right
just saying
back.
make a motion to approve it.
Make a motion to approve it.
I'll make a
second?
motion to approve.
Second by Mark. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? So moved. We have
That-
another one here for
Malin's not here. Do you want,
Mark
We're on the record,
she
Shifter.
but-
could write this down?
We need everybody to vocalize what their vote is.
Excuse me?
Well, wait,
We need everybody to
Let's read
vocalize
it.
what their vote is. I heard you, but nobody else, Tony.
I'll second.
I made a motion.
Oh, she made a motion, Mark
Motion
seconded,
second,
and
and
we,
the vote is
I asked
unanimous?
for,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
I need, so I actually squared somebody out.
Brian?
What have you, Brian is gonna take, the Bernice Chu?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And the board just voted to
And we
approve
just made a
Farrell.
motion on Farrell Builders to
Okay,
approve that license. Brian did not vote on it.
all right, so
Motion was
who
made
the
by
motion?
Anne Marie.
Thank you.
Seconded by Mark. There was no objection, it was approved.
Thank you.
Now we have Mark Shifter.
I'm recusing.
Shifter Engineering, sorry. A motion to approve this one?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay,
We
so,
have
so
Tom's
be it.
TL for the renewal. You're doing, I have a renewal too.
Who?
Tom's, my husband, my building business.
It's a renewal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
doesn't
but-
have to, Mark's is new?
Mark is new.
No, Mark is a
Yeah,
renewal.
No,
we
I'm sorry.
couldn't move on him.
No, it was
Okay,
also-
those two
No,
are
no, it's
approved.
also renewal. No, no, it's same as Anne Marie.
You
We
can
need
take
to-
it out of order and.
We need to take one for
Yeah.
Anne Marie.
We went out of order because you were still working on new things. These are
Okay.
new. I just wanted to get
No,
these
but-
over with.
Those are renewals.
Mine was new.
His was new,
His-
Mark's is a renewal.
Okay,
Just so-
fine.
okay.
All right,
So
Sorry,
we've
I
done,
just-
We got-
just for the record, we have all hearings, new hearings, that's been resolved. Previously not approved applications have been approved by Brian, second by Annie. We are now ready to go on new home improvement contractors. There were 26. We did separate, which was the Farrell, because Brian is he's going to be the contractor of record that has an approval, and now you're ready to go ahead and do 25, please.
Okay.
I'll motion to
That was gonna be my next move. Thank you.
I'll motion to approve those 25.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
But there's just one, actually, I'm sorry.
Renewal applications. We have 86. Motion,
So moved.
second.
I
No,
have to
but-
recuse myself
Yeah, there's one.
You're recusing yourself
for
for
TL Film Carpentry Corp. 2906.
2906. Anne Marie's excusing herself on 2906. On 85 of them, I have a motion from
Me.
Brian,
Second.
seconded by Mark, to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, so moved. On, what was that number, Anne Marie?
002906.
00290 renewal.
So
Got
moved.
Motion by Brian, seconded by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So moved. New plumbing registrations. We have one. Motion,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? So moved. Renew registrations for plumbers. Motion,
So moved.
second.
Aye.
Sec-
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye, all
Aye.
opposed, so moved. You all saw the letter that was sent to Cedar Homes on the suspension.
Yep. Right, so the attorney had contacted the town attorney's office. They were looking to challenge the determination via Article 78 proceeding. Rather than proceed with that, they were willing to stipulate that if this board were to slightly amend its determination, they would consent for the suspension to stand against that contractor. As issued by the board, this is simply some slightly different language than the initial suspension issued by this board, which would avoid them commencing the Article 78 proceeding. And this letter would stand in as the final determination of this board ratifying the suspension.
I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, sounds good. Any other business before the
We
board?
have to
Do we-
approve the
Do
minutes.
we need to make a motion on that?
No,
Oh.
wait it
I
out
need a,
for the
I need a
minutes.
motion.
Motion to
for
approve the minutes.
No, motion on the letter that you approve the amendment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
We have a motion by
Second.
Brian, seconded by Anne Marie. All in favor?
Can I abstain?
Aye, all opposed, so moved.
Sure.
I'll abstain.
We didn't make a motion on the minutes.
We-
That would be correct.
Can I get a motion on the previous meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second?
So I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Thank you. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Brian, second.
A second.
Mark, all in favor? Aye.
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 Meeting is closed.
I need you to
Thank
sign
you.
it. Do you have another time card that he can sign?